All right, so the first step in thinking about what causes our confusion is to go back a little and activate our own prior knowledge about what we already know, which is the 6 signs of confusion. And I'll take you through a little review of that. So the first one is your inner voice. And you might be confused if, you know, your inner voice stops having a conversation with the text. We know what good readers do is good readers hear their own mental voice responding to the text, and they notice when all they hear are the words of the text. And I like to compare this to Charlie Brown's Teacher, if you're familiar with that, where all you hear is the author saying blah 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 blah, and you're not really having any responses, disagreements, or anything with the author. So um, these are the questions you should be asking to check your thinking as you're reading, to know that you're having an actual conversation with the text. As I read, do I have thoughts, opinions, or questions about what I read? Also, can I hear my own mental voice responding to the text, uh, as opposed to just listening to the author and accepting everything they say? A second sign, or another sign, is your mental movie. So you might be confused if the video camera in your head shuts off. What good readers do is they make a mental movie based on the author's use of description. And when I say movie, I mean they don't just use the visual sense, they use all of the senses. So they can hear what the author is describing, they can uh, touch and taste sometimes what the author's describing, smell what the author's describing, etc. So they develop sensory images and connections with new information, even when reading informational text, which you don't often think about, um, but it is important to help you remember what you read, remember and retain what you read. So these are the questions you should be asking yourself as you read. Uh, can I describe what I saw? And when I say saw, I don't just mean saw, I mean all those other senses during reading. Can I stop and retell what I read accurately? What do I do when I don't see or experience any of the sensory elements described in the text? And notice that the word see is in quotation marks, and that means it, that word means all the other senses besides visual. Do I often get to the end of the text and cannot recall the big ideas of the text or imagine what happened? So these are all the questions that you should be asking yourself pertaining to that sign of confusion. The next sign we'll discuss is the wandering mind. So I might be confused if my mind wanders and I think about something else. Now, um, one of these good strategies, these fix-up strategies, is making connections, and we'll talk uh, about that later. But sometimes you make a connection too far. You think about a connection to the text, maybe, and then the next thing you know, your mind is totally someplace else, not even thinking about the text anymore. So connections are good, but wandering is not. What do good readers do? They quickly catch themselves when their mind is wandering and refocus. They monitor their own understanding. They stop, think, and they retell often. Uh, what kind of questions should you ask yourself to make sure that you're thinking about the text and your mind's not wandering? Um, do I often think about other things as I read? Do I tend to forget what I've read? And what do I do when I notice I am not attending to the reading? Okay, another sign of confusion that we'll discuss is retelling. So if you cannot remember or retell what you read, then that might be a sign that you were confused as you were reading. So what do good readers do? to monitor for this, they stop and retell the main ideas of what they read. So oftentimes, if I'm reading a really difficult text, something I know I'm going to struggle with, what I like to do is stop every so often and make a written summary or tell somebody next to me. Hopefully they're really patient when I'm reading something difficult. But most of the time I'll write a little summary so I can help remember what it is I read. You want to make sure you're providing important supporting details and relaying the main ideas and the details in a logical structure or order. Logical order or structure. Sometimes, you can use a graphic organizer for this, like a timeline or Venn diagram, or any number of things. But those are also helpful strategies. Here's some questions to check up on my thinking with regard to this sign of confusion. Is the text so challenging that I need to stop often and check my ability to retell what I just read? Do I need to annotate to help me understand and remember? So often that is a helpful strategy. Hopefully you own the book that you're reading and you can write in the margins. If not, use sticky notes, something like that, or just use a double entry journal where you're writing down the page number and a quote, and then draw a line, and then on the other side of where you wrote the page number and quote, you're going to write a question or a summary of what you just read. Okay, so here's another sign that I might be confused as I'm reading. So if my predictions, mental questions, and inferences are not supported or answered as I'm reading, I might also be confused. What do good readers do with regard to that? They ask questions and they seek answers as they read. So if your answers are not getting, or if your questions are not getting answered, then you're probably confused. You make and adjust predictions based on textual evidence. That's misspelled a little bit. So if I encounter something in the text that changes my prediction or makes me think, oh, that prediction's not valid anymore, then I've got to adjust my prediction. And I make inferences about the author's meaning based on clues in the text. So based on, about their meaning and sometimes their motives in writing whatever it is they're writing. What are the questions for checking my thinking? As I read, do I have thoughts, opinions, or questions about what I'm reading? Can I hear my mental voice responding to the story or information in the text? And then lastly, the sign that you might be confused as you read is if characters reappear and you can't remember who or what they are, or who they are and what they've done, why they're important to the story. So here's what good readers do. They keep track of the characters and know their importance to the story. Sometimes you can make a little kind of a map or diagram of who the characters are and some details and what their relationship to each of the other characters are in the story. And then sometimes maybe you can annotate so that you can better locate essential character information, or you can go back to a certain place and reread a little bit to find that essential character information that you missed. So these are questions that you ask with regard to if you find characters that pop up that you don't remember. Do I know how the characters are important to the plot? Because that helps you remember them. Can I imagine what each character looks like? Because that's a definite strategy to help you remember each character. Can I see the characters interact as described in the text? That's back to the visualization strategy, the mental movie. So that is your 6 signs of confusion. Now that we've got that out of the way,